Unfortunately, migraines are one of the most commonly underrated and denied claims out there. And we're going to dig into why today, because I need you to understand that you're not alone in this battle. Migraines suck. They can cause you to miss time from work, miss time with your family. Unfortunately, for a lot of us GWAT vets, it's remnants of TBI, anxiety, PTSD, hypertension. There's many things and many contributing factors that can tie into this, and you deserve the rating that you deserve. So let's make sure you get it. Phase 1 of our plan, right? We need to understand what the 38 CFR is, what the schedule rating says for the migraines claim. But before we do that, we should actually talk about what 38 CFR is. Well, we know it's a federal law. We know that parts 3 and 4 of it pertain to VA claims, how VA claims are adjudicated, and the schedule ratings. Now let's dive in. What is the schedule ratings? Well, if you're new and you haven't heard this before, it is essentially the dictionary, the Bible of VA claim. And I don't say this to be sacrilegious, but literally everything that's in there is the direct how-to guide of understanding the VA claim process and understanding where your disabilities rate. So let's start with some 38 CFR facts that are pretty interesting, right? The VA rating schedule was originally built in 1945 and still uses many of those same assumptions. A lot of disabilities and codes have been updated, but a lot haven't, right? Much of the 38 CFR, especially Part 4 where the schedule ratings is based upon a post-World War II workforce outlook, meaning they're expecting a lot of veterans to be in manual labor jobs, which to this day is true. Number 2, something you probably haven't heard of is the benefit of the doubt doctrine. In law enforcement, right, you probably know reasonable suspicion. I had to have a reason to search the car, so on and so forth. But when it comes to evidentiary duty for the VA, benefit of the doubt is the actual rule. It's literally the legal standard under 38 CFR 3.102. If evidence for and against is equal, the VA must grant in favor of the veteran. Something most vets don't know. Number 3, you can win service connection without a diagnosis during service. Under 38 CFR, subsection 3.303D. A condition diagnosed after discharge can still be service connected if there's evidence that proves it began during service or was caused by it. The VA must consider the highest possible rating supported by evidence, whether or not you ask for it. If your symptoms fit 2 potential ratings, the VA is required to give you the higher one. Veterans rarely realize that this rule exists, and it's one of the biggest ways we win appeals. And now to the meat and potatoes. You understand what the CFR is and a lot of the little things that go in behind it. Let's talk about the schedule ratings for migraines. 38 CFR subsection 4.124A, this is Diagnostic Code 8100 or 8100, migraines. Let's start at the top. What is a 50% rating? A 50% rating involves very frequent, completely prostrating and prolonged attacks, productive of severe economic inadaptability. These are attacks that knock the veteran out of commission. What is a 30% rating? Well, the 30% rating for migraines means characteristic prostrating attacks occurring on average once a month over the last several months. At least about one full lie down in a dark room type migraine per month for several months would be a 30% rating. For the 10%, we're talking about a characteristic of prostrating attacks averaging 1 in every 2 months over the last several months. Roughly 1 prostrating migraine every other month over a several month period is what would justify the 10% rating. Anything less frequent would end up netting you a 0% rating. Okay, so now that I went through the schedule ratings, let's talk about some of the crazy vocabulary that was involved there. The first one being prostrating. What prostrating means in regards to this, and in general folks, is that it requires you to lay down in a dark, quiet room. It is taking you out. You are non-functional, essentially. That is what prostrating means. The next piece of vocabulary that was critical in the schedule ratings was severe economic inadaptability. Unemployability or unemployment is not required to qualify for severe economic inadaptability. If you have to take time off work because of migraines, that's an issue that's causing economic inadaptability. It could cost you that job, it could cost you promotions, and what does your spouse have to do, right? Is it having an effect on the other people in your family's life? These are the things that contribute to severe economic inadaptability, and it's critical that you note them when you're thinking about your claim. Now, phase 2, we're going to be talking about what the DBQ is and what you need to understand on it. So before we go into this exact DBQ, we should probably answer what is a DBQ and why does it exist? Well, a DBQ, or Disability Benefits Questionnaire, is a standardized medical form that the VA uses to evaluate the severity of a veteran's disability. These forms were made to standardize the process of the CMP examiners recording issues, recording symptoms, how they're affecting the veteran, and then giving them off to the rater in a way that the rater can directly translate them to the schedule of ratings. So the system was invented to optimize and speed up the claims process, although they came out in about 2010, I believe, and they haven't really worked that much since. All right, so now we're looking at the headache, including migraine headaches, Disability Benefits Questionnaire, or DBQ. And the first question of relevance is the evidence review. So you're going to check no records were reviewed or records were reviewed. It's not asking them to describe how the records related to or backed or substantiated your claim. It's just going to ask them to identify what evidence it was that the doctor looked at. Box 1A, does the veteran now have, or has he or she ever been diagnosed with a headache condition? 1 Bravo. If yes, select the veteran's condition. They have migraines, tension, cluster. They can be all these things. In 1B, you'll see a bunch of diagnoses boxes. These continue on all the way to 1 Charlie. If there are additional diagnoses that pertain to a headache condition, list using above format. And that right there would be things like TBI, potentially PTSD, potentially sleep apnea, potentially bruxism or TMJ. There's a lot of things that could tie into that, but these would be the diagnoses that would be going here. Section 2 in medical history, it's going to say describe the history, including onset and course of the veteran's headache condition. This is where the doctor is really going to be asking you to explain a summary of this condition, right? You're going to need to tell them when did it onset, right? Did it onset in service or post service? If you're filing migraine secondary to something, it's okay if it's post-service, but if not, you're probably going to want to talk about how these things started in service. Now, when it comes to the course of the disability, right, is it the same, getting better, or getting worse? That can pertain to frequency and severity, right? So I'm having migraines more often, but they're becoming less of a lay down issue, right? They're not knocking me out as long. Or I'm having migraines less often, but God, they're getting way worse. Or vice versa, right? Doesn't really matter, but that is what you're going to need to explain to the doctor. Going on to 2B, does the veteran's treatment plan include taking continuous medication for the diagnosed condition? Now, mind you, this is not medical and or legal advice, and I'm not telling you to go ask for a prescription to ask for a prescription. I'm telling you that if you have a disability and it can be helped with prescription and you're not opposed to it, why not look into it? Now, in the realm of the VA world, what I'm telling you is that having a prescription is one of the fastest ways to ensure that they concede there's a diagnosis there. Box 3A, does the veteran experience headache pain? The options are yes or no, and if so, then the sub-options are constant head pain, pulsating or throbbing, or is it localized to one side of the head? 3B, does the veteran experience non-headache symptoms associated with headaches, such as nausea, vomiting, sensitivity to light, sensitivity to sound, changes in vision, sensory changes, or other? And then in 3C, indicate duration of typical head pain. Essentially, this is going to go into, is it an afternoon or a whole day? How is it affecting you? And it can ultimately tie into economic inadaptability and how you're explaining that. 3D, 3 Delta, indicate the location of typical head pain. You know, maybe my doctor was scratching his head. For me, when I had migraines, I felt like it was the center front of my brain. Now, we're going to go on to section 4, and it says, note, for VA purposes, the term prostrating means causing extreme exhaustion, powerlessness, debilitation, or incapacitation with substantial inability to engage in ordinary activities. There is your magic definition, good sir, or ma'am. So, 4A, migraine versus non-migraine. Does the veteran have characteristic prostrating attacks of migraine or non-migraine headache pain? Greater than once per month is a 50% rating. Once every month is a 30% rating. Once in every 2 months is a 10% rating. With less frequent attacks is a 0% rating right there. This prostrating frequency is the key to getting the rating you deserve. So 4B is where it gets really interesting here, right? Does the veteran have completely prostrating and prolonged attacks of migraines or non-migraine pain? The definition of prolonged, even in here, there is no definition. There's no, that means more than 2 hours. That means more than half a day. It's really kind of an unfair system. And that's why it's so critical that you articulate your symptoms well. We jump down to section 5 alpha, secondary issues. Is it from TBI, PTSD, bruxism, TMJ, anxiety, who knows what, right? That would go in here, and perhaps any disabilities or injuries that are resulting from the migraines, right? So, in section 6, diagnostic testing is not required for this examination report. If studies have already been completed, provide the most recent results below. So if there was testing or diagnostics done, this is where they would list them and talk about them. But in the C&P exam, there's not going to be any diagnostic tests that are really done aside from the verbal communication between you and the examiner. Section 7, does the veteran's headache condition impact his or her ability to work? This is where you have to articulate the impact that your headaches, your symptoms are having on your ability to work, and your spouse to work, and your family, and your life. Too much is better than too little. You don't want to tell them your whole life story, but you want to make sure you're covering the details. Section 8, remarks, if any, that might be for something that comes up later in the conversation and the doctor wants to note it as it relates to an earlier section. From then on out, it's just the examiner's certification and signature. That is the DBQ for migraines. All right, veterans, let's talk about section 3. That is understanding the C&P exam. And this is the most critical portion of this video. So let's understand some key facts that veterans don't even know or misunderstand, right? So number 1, the C&P exam is not treatment, it's purely an evaluation. Number 2, the examiner's opinion must follow strict legal standards. They're not just in there bullshit, or at least they shouldn't be. 3, you are allowed to bring evidence, symptom logs, and corrections to your C&P exam. Anybody who tells you otherwise is just full of shit. The VA rater, not the examiner, makes the final decisions. And number 5, you can request a new exam if the first one is inadequate. If the examiner didn't review your file, they rushed or skipped required tests, they provided no rationale, or if they misstated your symptoms, you're actually helping protect other veterans from having to go through the same process with a bad examiner.
And now that we've got those facts, it's time for the migraine C&P exam lightning round.
Number 1, minimizing symptoms, right? Don't say they're just normal headaches. Say, I get migraines X times per week and I have to lay down in a dark, quiet room until they relieve. Downplaying frequency. Don't say it happens once in a while or every so often. Say, I have roughly 1 or 2 migraines per month, or whatever your symptoms are. Hiding work impact. This is a big one. Don't say, it's all right, I just work through, my boss understands. Say, because of migraines, I've missed X days of work or had to take X hours of PTO. Minimizing prostrating attacks. Don't say, I just rest a bit and keep going. Say, when it hits, the pain is too much for me to do anything else besides lay in a dark, quiet room till it goes away. Ignoring family impact. Don't say, well, my family helps me sometimes, but it's fine. Say, my spouse or kids have to help me do X, Y, or Z, or my spouse has to take off work to help me do X, Y, or Z when I'm down. Minimizing mental health. Don't say, I get irritated sometimes, but it's nothing. Say, I snap at my kids or my wife or my coworkers, whoever, whatever it is. Talk about how it's affecting you because of the pain. Being vague about sleep issues. If your migraine affects your sleep, don't say, my sleep's not great, but I manage. Say, I sleep about X hours a night and then I wake up with a migraine. Or I can't go to sleep until later because I have a migraine, causing me to lose sleep, miss sleep, etc. This can even be caused by the drugs given to treat your migraines. On the day that you have your C&P exam, do your best to not wear your nicest clothes. And why do I say this? Well, because unfortunately C&P examiners, they're going to judge you. Everybody makes their own first impressions, and who knows what they see, who they are, or what it is. If you drive a nice car, wouldn't recommend driving it to the C&P exam. Why? They're going to judge you. Just facts. Don't do it. Right? Take an Uber, park a few blocks away, whatever it may be. Finally, when you're getting ready to leave the C&P exam, and they ask if there's anything else you want to add, anything you want to do, well, if you happen to have brought a symptom log, right? You've kept a headache log, a migraine log, whatever it may be, I would give them a copy of that for sure, or I would at least show it to them. If you can, make a copy and bring it to them. But that's it. Go home, and if you had a proper C&P exam, be patient, pray about it, and hopefully you get the rating you deserve because you played it right. Veterans, if you found any of this helpful, please like, share, subscribe, comment below, and we'll see you in the next one.